Hey y'all. Jeez, that was so dry. What's popping, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. So today, this video is going to be a little bit different, as you can probably tell already. And as the title, probably I will explain as well. But I wanted this to be kind of like a podcast type of thing. I do have a mic here, but when I was testing it out and listening to it back, some parts were cutting out. So I honestly don't want to even risk trying to get into what I'm about to talk about and then it cutting out. So, and me having to deal with that. So we're just not going to use the mic today. We're just going to use this and see where it goes. But yeah, so for today, I just did listen to a service, and her name is Stephanie Ike, I believe. The last name is spelled like I-K-E, I believe. A friend of mine had sent a video of hers, and ever since then I've been watching them, and I do really enjoy them. And I just kind of wanted to share with you all today everything that I learned from that service. I did write down a lot, like literally. Where are we at? Okay, so starting from here to here, I wrote all of these pages. It's about probably like let's just count just for the fun of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 pages, but trust me when I say there was a lot of information, and it was an hour-long video, so everything that she did say, like, she paired it with a bunch of examples, explanations for that, and that's why I took my time pausing and stuff so I can be able to actually understand what I'm reading or what I was listening to. And yeah, so yeah, like I said, this is basically just going to be me sharing everything that I got from that video, and I'm hoping the way that I internalize the stuff that she said and I wrote it down on paper will help anybody else who's going through this or on their journey with Christ and God, that they will be able to better understand and maybe get some different insight that they haven't thought about before. But so there are, she in the beginning, she was speaking about more generalized things, and then kind of towards the end she was mentioning there's 4 key steps that she mentioned. In those 4 key steps, where are we? The 4 key things to do to help activate your spiritual senses. So I think I might start there. Actually, guys, I think I'm just going to start from the beginning because there's so much stuff. I just want to make sure that I get it all. But yeah, like I mentioned, this first part is just like generalized things in her opening that she was starting with. So the first thing I wrote down is, it is not by our strength or power, but by your spirit. So basically what I got from that is that it is not by our flesh that we are able to do things. It is by the spirit that we have within us. Obviously I basically just said exactly what that said, but a sound precedes the move of God. So one of the things that she had mentioned was Jeremiah 29:11. She said, or the Bible says, the plans that I have of you are of good and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. So basically, Jesus will keep you in a place of prayer, not because he doesn't hear you, but to kill the ambition in your heart. So that is what is motivating the prayer. Selfish. See, y'all, I'm already getting a little confused up, so just bear with me, only because my notes aren't really coming out like how I'm trying to explain it, if that makes sense. But that quote was basically just telling you, obviously, to trust in the Lord, that he's here for your benefit. He's here for your protection. It's not for evil purposes. It's for, your future. But this is something else that she mentioned. She said that he keeps you in a place of prayer, not because he doesn't hear you, but to kill the ambition in your heart. So another thing that I had seen from a previous service that I was watching Stephanie as well. She had mentioned not to idolize things, and that's one thing that I really took on for myself, especially relating it into like worldly things or things that I'm going through, like relationships with people and stuff like that, is not to idolize anything, like even your own self. If you think that you can handle things by yourself, like, and you could do, I mean, obviously physically you can, but if you think that that is the sole thing that is going to get you where you need to be, you are wrong, and that is idolizing yourself. Just how people will idolize like a partner in a relationship, or idolize whatever religion that you may have, or whatever it is that you do believe in. So you're only supposed to idolize Jesus. That is literally the only thing that you're supposed to do. So when they're saying that he's keeping you in a place of prayer, that kind of related to me a little bit, because I have for a long time felt that I've been like, I would pray a lot, and I thought I was doing what I needed to do, but I still wouldn't really feel him or hear his voice or anything like that. So this just kind of affirmed to me that it's not because he's not listening, but it's in the intent to kill the ambition in my heart that I don't need him, that I'm not dependent on him, because the closer that I get to him, he will start to reveal things to me. And then, yeah, he won't keep me in that place, you know, of like feeling like I'm stuck, or feeling like I'm not growing or moving anywhere. She also talked about that normally that happens when your prayers are based around selfish gain. And alright, so I kind of already started going through the first page, but I realized the more that I was like just reading and talking, it wasn't really making sense. So I kind of got to go through it first to process what I'm about to say, if that makes sense. So we're going to start over. This, like I said, this is going to be just kind of random stuff. It all ties together in the end, but it might sound like random stuff right now. But so the first thing I wrote down is, it's not by our strength or power, but by your spirit. So obviously that means exactly what it says. Within our flesh, it is not only by us or through us to be able to achieve things. It is through your spirit, and the spirit that you have within you that guides you to those places. She did mention Jeremiah 29:11. It says, the plans that I have of you are good and not of evil, to give you a future and hope. Same thing with that, basically says exactly what it says, that Jesus is not out here to hinder you, to control you or anything like that. He has plans for you that are obviously amazing. You just have to be able to seek him, to allow him to be able to reveal that for you. She also talked about that he keeps you in a place of prayer, not because he doesn't hear you, but to kill the ambition in your heart. So this is one that kind of resonated with me, because I've been struggling a lot with feeling like I'm doing the right things and trying to get, like, in my journey and stuff like that, to get closer to him. I've been praying, I've been talking, I've been genuine and all of that, but sometimes I don't feel the closeness like that I feel like I should. So with that, it kind of made sense to me, because he's basically saying that he's not keeping you in that stagnant position because you're not being heard at all. Like, he hears you, he hears everything that you're going through, but he's keeping you there for a reason. And they're saying it's to kill the ambition in your heart. So, like, the ambition that you may have to where you feel like you don't need to be dependent on him, you don't need to seek him for things, that is self-idolization. Like, you shouldn't idolize anything in the world, in life in general, other than Jesus. So when you are, you know, when you have that and you roll by that, or I guess you walk by that, like your own self, that's why he's trying to, that's why he feels like he has to keep you in that place, because you don't understand it yet. Like, you haven't learned that it's not up to you. So he's trying to kill that first in your heart so you can make room for him, if that sort of makes sense. So basically, another thing that she's saying is that if he gives you what you want, like whatever you're praying for, say you're praying for it through selfish purposes, if he gives you what you want and doesn't, you know, go by his plan and his process, the implications that you will receive are beyond what you may have thought before. So, like, for example, let's say if you're like, oh God, like I'm in a pickle with money right now and I really need this, and say it's a selfish purpose that I don't know, but regardless, basically, if you're coming to him with, because God says he wants you to talk to him and be authentic and be genuine about everything that you are coming to him about. So if you are coming to him with a selfish intent, and you're like, oh Lord, I just want money and I just want fame and I just want this and that, rather than you coming to him and wanting what he wants for you, what he has planned for you, it causes you to not be able to see the bigger picture of everything and why that may be. Like, you're going to be so narrow-minded on your own desire that you cannot see why he's not providing that for you. And that's why they're saying the implications are beyond what you may think it is. Because obviously your eyes are not open to that. It also said she also spoke about God will often bring you into an atmosphere that will expose what is in your heart so he can deal with it. He is not bringing you to give you what you thought, but to deal from a plane of truth. So this basically means that, like, he will put you in uncomfortable positions. He will put you in an atmosphere or an environment that makes you feel like you need him, like you need to seek him. And not necessarily that specifically, but like they're saying, it'll expose whatever is in your heart. So if it is that, if it is, you know, the cry for help that you need him, and you're dependent on him, he will expose that so he can, you know, do what he needs to do with that to help you. So what she kind of also explained was that you understanding that it's not all you is your deepest truth of yourself. So he's not bringing this, he's not exposing this stuff from your heart for no reason, but for the ability for you to understand that it is your truth. I feel like I'm having a hard time exposing, like, not exposing, as I just exposed it. I feel like it's a little difficult to explain what I mean, and I want you guys to be able to understand, like, what I grasp from it. It's just hard once it's in my head to, like, put it out in the same way. So, like, an example of this that she mentioned was Jesus choosing Judith to hold the money, knowing that he was a thief. Like, he was the one who was had control over, like, the money bag. So basically, the reason that he instilled this or gave the responsibility to Judith is because he knows that he's a thief, but in his intent, in Jesus' intent, he wants Judith to get to a point to where he comes to him and he says, oh, help me. You know what I'm saying? Like, he reaches out to Jesus. So that's why it's kind of like a test. He knows that he basically has a weakness in stealing, but he still gives him that responsibility in order to see where his heart is, or in order to expose what is in his heart. So that will test him, and what's genuinely in his heart will obviously rise in itself. He will steal again, etc. And if not, then he would come to him and he would give it to him, give everything to the Lord. So that's kind of what they mean by exposing in your heart, either good or bad, really depends. Another thing that she spoke about are There are times that God will show you things for you to stay in a place of intercession, for it not to be discussed, but to stay in a place of prayer. So same thing back to what I was saying before. Like, he is basically trying to build you. He's trying to grow you, and he will keep you in that position until he feels like you are ready. It's not for you to be over here, sometimes even like talking about with other people. Like, it might be something internal that you personally like need to keep close to your heart. Like, and it's all, everyone, God has his own unique things for every single person. Like, he has a plan for all of us. So obviously each of our paths, each of our plans are unique. So also, the Lord's judgment has gone over many nations. As a result, things will happen that won't make people comfortable. So kind of what she was explaining with that is that in Egypt, whenever, like in the Bible, they say the Israelites, when they were held captive for a long period of time, and then Moses came, and Moses was sent to basically free them, and the prophet refused, and he was not willing to set them free. So God came and he basically showed his judgment upon the whole nation by insinuating and foreshadowing that there would be a plague. And if you read the Bible, there is a famine that comes over or washes over the land for 7 years, and then it is an abundance first for 7 years, and then that leads to a famine for another 7 years. So they basically were being granted the abundance of resources and stuff like that, and they were meant to what's the word for it? I was about to say savor them, but they were meant to how do you say it? How do you say it? They were meant to use them with they were meant to use them with due diligence, I guess is a better way to phrase it, to make sure that when the years of famine did come, that they were plentiful in resources and that they could survive. So that's kind of what they're saying when they say, as a result, things will happen that won't make people comfortable. So it's like his self-expression and his judgment of what's going on. He will show that in different things, and that's what happened in that story. Another thing that she mentioned is when the Lord is the one giving you a dream, because she went to start talking about dreams. When the Lord is the one giving you a dream, then the language is the language of the Spirit. And if you don't have an intimate relationship with the Holy Spirit, it will be hard to interpret. So this made a lot of sense too. So personally, I don't know whether I have dreams. Like, at this moment, I don't know whether I have dreams that are of God, because it's hard for me to discern, honestly. And then when I wake up, it's gone. And I won't lie and say that there aren't other habits that I've heard are blocking me from that I indulge in, that I'm working on. And so like I said, I'm not too sure, or haven't been too sure, like what's from God and what's not, what I should take as signs and what I shouldn't. So like what I just read, it's saying that the language is of the Spirit. If you don't have a closeness with God, you will not be able to distinguish what is from him and what is not. And the way that she kind of described it is that, like, in different languages and stuff like that, you are able to understand a certain language because that is your language, if that makes sense. Obviously, so like say Spanish or something like that, it's your language, so you're able to interpret it. God has his own language, and that language is of the Spirit. So therefore, if you don't understand the language of the Spirit and you don't have a close relationship with whom is presenting that, you will not be able to hear it. You won't be able to you might be able to hear it, but you won't be able to understand or interpret what is actually being said, or the meaning that has on your life, or what he's trying to express to you in that moment. She also said that dream interpretations are not dream translations. So she was mentioning that, how I said before, that everyone is unique. Everyone has their own path. So a translation is a generalization for everyone. So like how, let's say, if you say something in English, you'll be able to translate that, let's say like to Sweden or something like that, and everyone will be able to understand because that is the language that you are familiar with. But dream interpretation is unique to your individual self. So however you choose, God will show you certain things, certain signs that will allow you to interpret it to yourself to match your plan, or like your journey and what you're going through and stuff like that. So that's why interpretation is unique to the dreamer itself, while translation is general to everyone. So she also said within that there's something unique that the Lord is trying to get across to you. So again, what I had just mentioned before, the Pharaoh had the dream, but needed, well, back to the Bible, so you guys are not real confused real quick. But so she talked about how the Pharaoh had the dream but needed Joseph, because Joseph was one who was really tapped into his spirituality and into the Lord, and he could pick up on things that the Lord was giving him, and he could interpret that. So the Pharaoh was the one who had the dream, but because he wasn't tapped into the Lord, he wasn't able to interpret what the dream meant. So he so because of Joseph's divine insight that he had from the Lord, when the famine came, they were protected. And they were protected because he was able to give that to the Pharaoh. Basically, he was able to get knowledge that he wouldn't previously been able to have himself, because he doesn't have that closeness to be able to receive that insight. So yeah, that is basically that whole page. I hope that all kind of made sense in me going back to the story of like the famine and all of that. But yeah, so moving on. She also talked about when there is judgment over a nation, what causes you to be exempt is knowing what to do in that season. So that is exactly what we just talked about, that basically for you to be exempt of God's judgment and expression, you have to know through him, by him, like within yourself, what you should be doing. So because Joseph knew that, what he should be doing within that season, he was able to lead the Pharaoh in that direction, and that is why he was exempt from the judgment. And during that time, the Pharaoh was known to have a hardened heart. So, like I said before, he wasn't willing to let the Israelites free from captivity. So different things occurred because he had a hardened heart. If he had a softened heart, he would be able to be, vulnerable. He would be able to be open to seeing what God was trying to do. So in the service, she mentioned that all the plagues obviously ran through the nation, and on the 10th plague, the angel of death went to kill every firstborn. So God didn't give a disclaimer. So he gave them divine intelligence. He said to take the blood of the lamb, mark it on your doorpost, and then when the angel obviously saw that, he passed over those people. So she mentioned how this is kind of foreshadowing God's sacrifice of Jesus, which is his firstborn, obviously. So in correlation, to kind of make that make sense a little bit more, it wasn't necessarily, and this is why I'm gonna go into a lot more. You're gonna understand why this all kind of makes sense, but it wasn't necessarily about it being the firstborn specifically. It was, excuse me, it was about the obedience and the submission to do exactly what he asked. And same thing with himself. God's submission and, even in himself and what he believes in was his sacrifice, ended up being the same sacrifice that he gave and was willing to give for his firstborn, which was Jesus. So in Exodus 13, God says, consecrate every firstborn that belonged to him. So this was the reason why he did that was to remind them that the blood of Jesus is what paid for that. So basically, in our words, worldly words, like not to get cocky or to basically like caught up within yourself, and just to remember where it came from and why you received that in the first place. So like she said, when the angel saw, he saw that basically death took place already there when they put the blood on the doorpost. When he came through, he saw that already took place, so he needs to move on and he needs to go to other people. And that kind of relates to like a bigger scheme of things, that if you are obedient and you submit yourself, the devil, Satan, he will be forced to look over you, because your confidence and your authority in that is so strong that he has no place to like override it or come in between it. So that's kind of where she was explaining that. She also mentioned that there is a wisdom that God gives and an insight for times to come that causes you to be exempt. I wish like I reread through all of this already afterwards, and then wrote something down to help me kind of summarize it all, because this is kind of going back to exactly what I already just said, that it's the wisdom and it's the insight that allows you to be exempt from his judgment. If you don't have the insight that he has, you're not going to know. So therefore, you're going to fall in line with everybody else that is being judged, because you can't be exempt from it, because you're not moving in the same light, obviously. God uses times of chaos to shine the light of his people. So we are the light of the world. The darkness births one of the greatest revivals. So in the example that she was mentioning, that she used COVID, and she kind of said that like that was a great time of revival. So obviously the world was in darkness, we were going through a lot, but then we got comfortable. So because we got comfortable with it, and like, COVID started dying off and people were like, oh, it's not nothing anymore, we were no longer, or everyone, or most people, excuse me, were no longer in a place to be able to be used as the light that God was trying to shine. So how I can kind of explain this to make it a little bit more sense is that he will try to show the most light in times that are the most dark. So if you're comfortable in that darkness and you're not really wanting to elevate out of that, you're not going to be able to receive the same revival that you would, that someone would be able to if they were in fear, if they weren't comfortable, they still sought God, and they wanted to become that light. They will be the one who are rebirthed, rather than people who are stagnant or comfortable in being where they're at. She said that there is another season coming that will birth a spirit of prayer within you. So it will draw you to seek him, because you know that his guidance is the only thing that will sustain you. It's your only true source of dependency. So exactly that within yourself, And in dark times, that's why God kind of does that. Like, he'll put you in periods of isolation or loneliness, or like just overall maybe turmoil sometimes, but he does that in order for you to see the light within the darkness, and for you to depend on him and to seek him, and for you to fully realize and accept that his guidance is literally the only thing that is going to fulfill you, that's going to sustain you and get you to where you need. And us going through stuff, or the world going through stuff, like back to COVID, like, it's certain spiritual ways that those things are happening in order to ignite that in you, that you may not see. So worldly things, in different seasons of that present itself, that you may not even know has a deeper purpose behind it. She also mentioned in Kings II that there was a king of Syria who wagered war against the king of Israel. So every move that he made obviously backfired, because the king of Israel, so every move that he made backfired because they already knew his plans. So he believed, the king of Syria, he ended up believing that there was a traitor in his camp, because he's like, oh, how do they already know my plans, and how do they like know what I'm thinking and stuff like that. Elijah was the one who, like I mentioned before, was tapped in with God. He had that divine insight. So because of that, he could receive the plans of the enemy. God gave him the ability to hear the plans of the enemy miles and miles away, because he was so in tune with God. So he ended up telling the king of Israel and about all the king of Syria's plans, and the insight caused the king of Israel, or Israel in general, to have an advantage. So because of that, the king of Syria was like, oh my goodness, like, he's a traitor, we got to go after Elijah, and we have to, obviously take him down, because it caused weakness in him. And Kings 2, 6:15 says, and when the servant of the man of God rose early and went out, there was an army surrounding, and his servant said, Master, what shall we do? So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. So basically, in that moment, God was giving him the ability to see, or to not only see, but also to have peace and not have fear about, all the people trying to hurt him or kill him, or whatever the case may be. And he was granted that because there's more. When he says, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them, he's saying that there are more people who have faith in Jesus and are following his journey and his path than the people who are following, in the sense, King Syria's, the king of Syria's path or objective. And like, you can relate that to Satan and the devil, or not Satan and the devil, Satan and Jesus, and the difference between those two. That, like, we have more believers, we have more people believing and having faith in going by Jesus's principles than the people who are doing the complete opposite. So he was granting him that peace to feel that he has nothing to worry about, because we're very plentiful over here on our side in our faith, and there's no reason to fear because of that. On top of that, she was also mentioning and explaining how Elijah, he could have simply said, because him being so in tune with Jesus, he technically didn't have to prove himself, because he knows already. So he could have simply said, like, oh, trust me, like, I know what you don't, so like, just go based off of what I'm telling you. But instead, he said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened his eyes of him, and he saw. So not only did he grant him the ability to believe what Elijah was saying, but he gave him the physical aspect to open, not only physical as like just his eyes, but within his heart and his being too, that he was able to see all the horses, all the chariots, everyone around, and see their intention of what they were there to do. And he did that just to increase his faith a little bit, just to go that extra mile, that extra step to really like show him his glory. And I think that is just beautiful. But yeah, and they say they do that so he can not only trust but to be able to see as well with his own eyes. She did also mention that, or spoke on, the Lord will make his presence also known through scent. So there are smells of the Spirit when God chooses to activate that for you. And then she said, for example, wind could be another thing other than the smells, but it is something that God is using to activate it within you. And it is to get you to basically press in deeper, press in harder of what he's trying to get across to you. So she said, for example, when you smell rotten eggs or anything rotten, like smelling or sour, it's the presence of an evil spirit who is uncomfortable. So it has revealed itself to you in that way and can mean that someone potentially is about to get delivered. And she gave an example that she had for herself. She started smelling something rotten, and then literally like 20 minutes later, this lady was delivered, and she started manifesting, and that spirit then had left her afterwards, after doing all of that. So she, not for example, but as a definition, if you aren't aware, manifesting is when the spirit basically takes over. So because it exposed itself, and like how I said before, that God will lead you to expose what's in the heart, because it exposed itself and it had no place of staying there anymore, it left. So he will send you signs in order to be able to for you to be able to see that and understand that. And even within yourself, like if you smell that, or you smell something rotten around you, and you just get the inkling of the presence of the evil spirit, pray. Like he's giving you a sign. He's giving you the ability to have senses to be able to pick up on that, so you can pray against it, so you can protect yourself. Like he's protecting you through yourself, but he's just giving little hints through scent or other things like that. She also said, when someone is about to be set free, be in prayer. You become aware of something that you need to press in for what God, you become aware of something that you need to press in for what God wills to happen to be manifested. So exactly like what I was just saying, what is in God's will to happen to be manifested is something that you become aware of. And like I said, through that scent, and that scent allows you to be able to question it a little bit and press in deeper of what God is trying to reveal to you. I'm gonna pause this and I'm gonna do a separate video just because I don't want my storage to die and the whole thing just delete. All right, so back where we were at. She also mentioned that you already have spiritual senses, and that is why Elijah did not say, God, give him the eyes to see, but open what is already there. It is already there. It's just dormant. So those senses that he's mentioning, you already have it within you. It's just dormant until you awaken it, or till you allow it to be of yourself, and practice that. So she was saying that in the life of a believer, it is the Holy Spirit that activates that. So it will basically be asleep until you receive the Holy Spirit within yourself, that pushes you to be able to activate those senses. So if you don't have the Holy Spirit within you, there's not going to be anything there that increases your spiritual senses. It just doesn't work like that. So that's why he said he doesn't want to only give him the trust within his ears, but through his eyes, so he can be open to what is already there within him, but just, dive deeper a little bit into that. Something else that she mentioned that I am learning a lot about is things of the new age. And a couple other podcasts I've been listening to about like astrology, crystals, tarot, a bunch of things that I didn't know were new age, but they are. And one thing that she stated was of new age is opening your third eye. So she said that it is really a demonic spirit giving you access to see what comes through, and evil spirits carry their own nature. So she said opening your third eye is a demonic spirit actually giving you access to see, and what comes through an evil spirit carries their nature. So whatever that spirit's nature is coming through to you as well, with that window that you think that you just opened through your third eye, but you're basically just giving them access to penetrate yourself in your energy. So she said Satan cannot give you anything good. The end of Satan is destruction. He can only take you where he's headed. So, and she used an example to kind of make that more clear, like celebrities nowadays when they say that, or like they sell their soul to the devil. Satan cannot take you further or beyond where he's going. So, yeah, it may seem that they're like living a rich, amazing life, like going back to the example of the celebrities and stuff like that. But this is only like little crumbs that he's leading you to your own destruction, because he cannot go further than that. Like, that's where obviously Satan, that's where he's headed. So he's trying to lead you in exactly in that same direction. So he baits you by giving you little things like influences, obviously the money, the fame, and stuff like that, to get you to start believing in that. They say it's only for a period of time that he does this. If you receive permission to see from him, from like an evil spirit, if you receive permission, it will it will only be filtered through destruction, because Satan can only see destruction. That's all he's like rooted within, and that's his purpose. He loves to do that. That's why he's here. So if you open yourself to that, the only thing that will be filtered is that. Like, I was trying to explain it a little bit more, but it basically says exactly what it says. So another example that she talked about, which goes back to the new age stuff, which is really important, I feel like, which I did not know, is, for example, like psychics and mediums and people that tell you about you, or tell you about people that you are aware of, and like they give information about it, like a medium. Like if someone has passed away, they'll give you information about your past loved one. And this is like something that I had to kind of understand myself. And it's not necessarily that the medium as a person, their physical form, is sitting here and has ill intention. It's like, oh, I'm going to get information out of these people who are coming to me about their past loved ones. It's not like that, but it's like, it's more in the sense that when you open yourself up to practices like that, you're opening that window for other entities and other things to latch on. So in that sense, for example, if a medium is saying, oh, your grandma used to wear this, and like, obviously that no one else would have known that she did that, it's really just the demons from the past, not from the past, but it's the demons that were around in the past that are giving that information to the medium, or to the person who has now opened up that channel of communication. So you might think that, or they might think that they're doing it with an intent to help somebody or to bring them closer to their loved ones, but in all reality, it's really just the demon, or the spirits, or the evil energies just trying to control and get a hold of you through things that make you vulnerable or make you weak. So because obviously the devil knows that, let's say for example, the devil knows that you're going to be in a state of depression for a long time if you don't, feel a closeness to like a past loved one, and that's just something that you've really been seeking. So then you keep going back to these mediums, you keep going back to these people who do these practices through you, and it causes you afterwards to be like, oh my gosh, I found a closeness with her, and like I'm reconnected with him or her, and I feel the love, and I feel so much better, and you're thinking it's that way. So then subconsciously, because that's something that you need and your body needs in that time of vulnerability, you're going to continue those practices. You're going to keep going back. You're going to keep thinking that in doing that it's helping you, but it's really not helping you at all. It's causing you to become, what's the word for it, a slave. Basically, you're becoming a slave to that practice in general. Like, and that's what I go back to, which is so crazy how you put everything together. That's why I go back into when they talk about idolizing things. So that literally is Satan causing you or baiting you to idolize readings and mediums and stuff like that rather than Jesus. Like, and that's gonna have you in a chokehold. Basically, you're gonna keep going back because that's what you feel is what is working for you, and that has you become literally a slave to a certain thing. You should never idolize or become a slave to any specific thing, especially something like that where it has connections and communications with evil entities. So it's just very dangerous, and I feel like that's something that I never even thought of at all. Like, I never ever thought of it that way, and it's so insane to me how people can be so blind to it. But it's not out of a place of like naiveness, it's out of a place of like just being unaware. Like, if you're unaware that that's even going on, you're gonna walk into it thinking that you're doing the right thing, thinking that it's out of a place of like healing and light and love, and it's not at all. So it can cause deception to really be prevalent because you're being deceived of what you're actually receiving. And that is, when I learned that, like, it honestly broke my heart, and like it really made me emotional because I'm like, dang, there's so many things along with that as well that we think is we think we're doing out of pure nature and pure intention, and it just unfortunately is not that way. In its actuality, it's not that way, and it doesn't matter what your intention is. The devil has the power to manipulate you, to deceive you, and that's where deception shows. And I also learned, going kind of out of this one, but also learned that Satan can only mimic what God shows, but he mimics it in a way to where you are not able to tell what is the truth and what is not the truth. And there's two sides to it. Both sides may look the same, but obviously one is the right path and one is not. And that's where he gets you. He gets you and he tricks you into believing that, okay, crystals, mediums, tarot, for example, just because we're using this new age stuff, he gets you to believe that those are the ways of Christ, or the way to be. And when you get so caught up in thinking that that is light, or that is the way that you are to be, you're making yourself a slave to you're making yourself a slave to Satan that you had no idea that you were doing. And that's why it's just so, like, it's really sad. It really is sad because a lot of people just don't know that they're doing that. And then it opens themselves up to depression and anxiety and so many other things that literally root from Satan that you're opening yourself up to because you're just not aware. Like, and that's why it's so important to pray, and that's why it's so important to go to Jesus and make sure that you ask him to grant you the discernment to know what is the truth and what is not the truth. And that's something that I'm learning, because it's just crazy, and it really shows how scary not the world, but how scary everything actually is when you're in tune with it. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's like you got to be extremely careful. You really do. So I know that was a little bit of a rant, but back into what she was saying. So let's see, she said, yeah, so she kind of mentioned back with the physics thing, not the physics, Jesus, with the psychics thing, that in doing that, a seed is being planted of what is already known. It was known in the spirit realm, like I mentioned, say your grandma's favorite color or something like that. She said the person is given the ability to see, but eventually curses will be spoken when you continue. So in the beginning it'll seem real, but like I said, it's just bait. When you get hooked, it's subtle. So she used a really good example, like you going to a psychic and them saying, oh, you're gonna have four marriages. Basically, in believing that and continuing to practice that ideology is basically in the spiritual realm cursing your first 3 marriages, and it's manifesting that is what will be. So again, she's saying that in the life of a believer, it is the Holy Spirit that activates it within you. You are submitted to him. It is not always on, but it is on and will reveal itself when needed to be. So when there's something that God wants to show you, he'll cause you to either hear it or sense it, so you have a knowing of what's to come. And that goes back to the discernment. You just have to believe in him enough to be able to know these things. Just like how I've come to understand this, so many people, I feel like, don't even have a clue or can sit here and vouch how good these things are, like how good of astrology and like cards, and like it's just crazy. But like, you can't judge and you cannot blame anybody, because if you are unaware, you're just unaware. So there's no way for you to know if you just don't know. So yeah, so I think because this has been a really long video, I think I might just kind of close this out as being just a kind of generalized talk about some things that she mentioned. And I know I did say that there were 4 key things that she talked about to help activate your spiritual senses, but I kind of want to make that a separate video because this is already extremely long and there's so much to talk about within that all connects back. So instead of making everything jumbled, I think I'm gonna just put that in a separate video. So, but yeah, you guys, thank you so much for listening. If you did, I want to, my whole platform and stuff, as I'm growing as an individual and as a child of Christ, like there's so many things that I want to do and am working on. So I don't want to limit myself to being in a box. Therefore, I probably will post more stuff like this, like more little podcasts or just talks about Jesus. I know on my page it's mainly like vlogs or random stuff throughout my life, but this is my life and this is part of me growing in my journey. So I feel like it's extremely important to share, especially with people who aren't unaware or are unaware, because I was in that very same position, and I can't even sit here and say that I'm elite and I'm at a position of all knowing, because I'm really not at all in the slightest. I'm just like starting to grasp certain things, and I'm starting on that journey. And that's why as I'm learning, I like to write everything down and I like to speak about it and make a video on it. So personally, it allows me to be able to look back on my growth and where I started and came from. But also, yeah, to help anybody else who's like struggling or wanting to know more. And it just needs that like little boost or whatever. But also, it's good information, and whether you want to believe it or not, I'm not sitting here saying like you gotta. I'm forcing you to believe whatever it is. We all have our truth, and I will say, I believe there is only one truth, but you cannot find your truth until you seek that. So I'm not forcing that upon anyone, but if anything, it is information. Like, it's new information that can allow you to be open and question things, and I feel like that's important in itself, is at least to be able to have a different perspective of or side of things and be open to that. So yeah, you guys, thank you just so much. There will be more of these, but again, I'm just gonna probably continue the next video. So I will see y'all over there. Blessings to everybody. I love you, and yeah, just keep Jesus with you. Please just keep him with you. I'll see y'all next video.